Bum 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 bum. Mystical sand, bring me a dream. Make her the cutest that I've ever seen. Oh, that's right. We're going back to the Nemleria deck, and she's gonna attack you. Hello folks, I am the Ghost with Knife, and welcome back to more Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. As you saw in the very silly intro, we are returning back to the Dreaming Nemleria deck. I have been loving this deck in the very little free time that I've had for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel lately, and I really wanted to do another video on this deck. I love this deck. It's easily one of my top 3 decks, if not top 2. If you want like a big full description of what this deck does, I'm going to leave a link in the description for my last video we did on Nemleria, where I'm going to be taking a deep dive. This is supposed to be a really quick video where we just kind of play something fun that is something that I just wanted to revisit. But if you don't have time for another entire video, I'll give you a brief synopsis. And the Nemleria deck focuses on putting Nemleria in the pendulum scale, and then putting her on top of your extra deck face up. From there, you're going to be using a bunch of cards to banish your extra deck monsters face down, which is not only going to make Nemleria better, but also Grand Maju. And you get rid of all these extra deck monsters by using stuff like your big dream monsters that are the O'Reillers and such. And then from there, once your extra deck is empty, except for your face-up Nemleria, you can special summon her and just non-targeted banish a bunch of stuff on your opponent's field and graveyard and go for game. This is a really powerful go second FDK kind of deck. That's also just really silly and has a lot of really silly monsters. And also we get to use Dimension Shifter, which is really, really powerful. So without further ado, let's get into those replays of this absolute darling of a deck. Alright, getting into our first replay here, we've already got some really silly nonsense before the game even begins. As you can see, we have a very new, very sleepy buddy known as Baguska, the terribly tired tapir. He's just taking a nap right next to Nemleria's tower. Don't mind him. Also, we do have the moon as a nice little bedtime atmosphere for Baguska and Nemleria. I know it's Whitestone of Legends. Shut up. That is very obviously the moon. And we're going to take the moon and take the sun and take everything that seems like fun. Anyways, all that nonsense aside, let's go ahead and get to our opponent. I did win the coin flip here, so I decided to go second, and that can lead to some bad things, but we have a pretty solid hand. We got a Pot of Desires, we got a Nibiru, and we have our Sweet Dreams Nemleria, which starts all of our nonsense. We do have a tower, which is kind of rough because we have 2 of them, and my opponent is on some absolute fire because they just used Dark Spirit's Mastery to play a Destiny board, which you don't see too often. My opponent's like, I'm Destiny board turbo, so I'm in a small world here. Now the idea behind the small world is that I want to grab Eater of Millions, because in my head I think, oh, once I summon Nemleria, I can put her in the deck, and then I can Eater of Millions, and then get rid of all of my extra deck monsters, and then use Nemleria to pop their backboard, and it doesn't matter from that point. My opponent is going to activate Destiny board, and then activate Sentence of Doom. You can target any number of your fiend monsters that are banished or in your grave, up to the number of Destiny board and Spirit messages you control. Add them to your hand. You can send this card from your spell and trap to the graveyard. Place a Spirit message card from your hand, deck, or graveyard in your spell and trap zone. This is to speed up Destiny board. I didn't even know that this was a card. My opponent did, though. They're going to try and grab back their Dark Spirit of Banishment. If your opponent's monster attacks at the start of the damage step, you can send this card from your hand to field to the graveyard, then target one level 8 fiend monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but its effects are negated, and you can change the attack target to it and perform damage calculation. This is just a way of trying to resurrect something to protect your life points so your opponent gets stalled long enough for you to have your almighty Destiny board go off. Now, I'm going to use Small World. I'm going to go ahead and ditch this D-Shifter and this Reviler that I have in my, or this Revile in my hand, because I have another one in deck. And the idea is, again, I'm going to grab Eater of Millions, and then I'm going to do all my Nemleria stuff, and it's going to go great, right? So we're going to go ahead and do the basic Nemleria stuff. Sweet Dreams grabbing our little sleepy princess, and she's going to get right on top of her tower and get right next to her buddy Baguska. Then we're going to use the actual tower card to grab O'Reiler and Rayvile so I can go ahead and get more cards out of my extra deck. I'm going to go ahead and use Pot of Desires. The main reason behind this is to fuel my Eater of Millions, who gets bigger for each face-down banished card. And we're going to be ditching one of our Grenmachus and two of our interaction pieces and our other Eater of Millions, but we don't really care. Again, we're trying to go for game right now. At least that's what I think. So I'm going to go ahead and use Reviler, get rid of some stuff out of my extra deck, summon the O'Reiler, summon the Eater of Millions, and as you can see, I did not summon Nemleria, even though she's the only monster in my extra deck. Why? Pretty simple. I just sent her to the extra deck this turn. You cannot send her to the extra deck and then get her from the extra deck in the same turn. I forgot this because I'm really big and really dumb. If I would have saved one card in my extra deck, I might have been able to kill my opponent, because I would have had 500 extra attack, as you can very clearly see. If I literally just saved one card from Eater of Millions, and then I would have had the one card I needed for O'Reiler to use his effect, get the 500 extra attack, and then I could have really just FTK'd my opponent out of nowhere. But I kind of panicked in the middle of all of it. I didn't think about this, but yeah, we could have FTK'd my opponent straight out of this game. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Revile's effect to go ahead and get Louvre, so I can grab my non-targeting Book of Moon. My opponent's going to go ahead and get their Spirit Message, and from this point I'm like, dude, what do I do? My opponent is going to use the Dark Spirit's Mastery to go ahead and discard a card to add a Destiny Board or a level 8 Fiend monster from the deck or graveyard to your hand. You can banish this from the graveyard, though, which is the effect they're activating right now, to grab any Destiny Board or Spirit Message cards with different names from your hand or graveyard onto the bottom of the deck, then draw the same number of cards. They're going to go ahead and put the A back to their deck, and I'm going to go ahead and Droll and Lockbird them so they cannot add anything else. My opponent is going to Monster Reborn to try and stall me. And then I don't think at this point they were reading what Nemleria does, and I think at this point they were like, oh, this doesn't matter, because the moment I just summon Nemleria, banish all 5 of their cards, and then just go for game. But yeah, I could have FTK'd, I just made a mistake, and my opponent realizes there is nothing they can do, and they scoop it on. Getting on to our next game here, and again, we've got very tired Baguska, and he's just chilling out. There's a moon here, but there's also a moon there. We get the full, cool Anniversary Blue Eyes board. Aren't you excited about this, folks? My hand is kind of garbage. I mean, Eater of Millions and Nemleria can be nice, you know, when used appropriately and not like an idiot. Gizmek can be kind of a nice way to remove stuff, so I have some things I can do, like Kaiju and Gizmek is a nice way to just remove threats off your opponent's board. Let's go ahead and see what our opponent is up to. I'm going first because I think I lost the coin flip and they made me go first. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another Nemleria from deck just to go ahead and thin it out a little bit. Go ahead and do all of my Nemleria nonsense. You saw this in the last game. 2 from the extra deck. Getting Revile and getting O'Reiler. Using Revile, getting rid of some extra deck monsters. I'm going to go ahead and use Revile's effect to go ahead and trash the O'Reiler because I have another one in deck I can grab with the Tower. Then I'll go ahead and use Louvre. I'm going to go ahead and set the Louvre, and from this point, this is just what I can do. I have one non-target Book of Moon and a Dream, and my opponent is playing Blue Eyes. They're playing Dictator of D with some Blue Eyes nonsense, getting rid of the Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon, I believe. And they're just going to try to summon Blue Eyes, and then they're going to just attack. Why didn't they synchro into something? I don't know, but they're going to try to attack. And I'm just going to Dream Tower, get rid of a card from my extra deck. Yep, my monster doesn't die. Welcome to the dream world. You take the moon, and you take your fun, and you get all of that nonsense out of here. My opponent is going to summon a Spirit Dragon from here, and I'm going to try to Louvre to basically just put the Spirit Dragon face down, so I don't got to deal with any of its nonsense. And my opponent Ash Blossoms my Nemleria Louvre, which I didn't even know they could do. So at this point, I'm like, alright, cool, I'm just gonna Gizmek. Who cares? Chain 4. I don't want you doing any other nonsense this turn, so we're gonna Gizmek. They're gonna negate our other cards, so this just gives us access to the pop early. I probably could have waited because I did get rid of 2 of my 3 Grenmachus, which is one of my finisher cards. So, oh yeah, and I got rid of every single one of my bot cards off of this Gizmek. And that's just the magic from Nemleria. You can just get rid of all of your key cards very easily with this. Why not? Who cares? Gonna go ahead and grab a troll here. Doesn't do anything. I'm gonna go ahead and kaiju away their big spirit dragon. And go ahead and use Gizmek's ability to get rid of their Lord of D in case they got some nonsense with it. I'm gonna go ahead and use the tower. Grab a Revile. Grab another. We're grabbing Kuet this time. I'm gonna go ahead and just summon all my monsters and attack. And then from this position, because Eater of Millions has eaten the rest of my extra deck, because it's incredible, and a few other cards to make them a little bit bigger, I'm going to go ahead and use Nemleria. We're going to banish this, and also a bunch of stuff from their graveyard, including a few of their blue eyes. And from this position, my opponent is like, alright, I've had enough. I don't want my blue eyes getting banished. And that is how you beat a baby blue eyes player with the Eater of Millions and Nemleria. Alrighty, getting into our next game here with Nemleria, and we have a hand we can use. Two of these Sweet Dreams is not incredible, but it's fine. My opponent is playing Lab. They're going to go ahead and get the Labyrinth, which is a pretty good draw. They're going to Ariana, and I'm going to Ash this because I just do not want them getting big welcome. My hand is not incredible against Lab, but I can do some very silly nonsense. And then they're going to go Tearlaments Shiren, because they're playing Tier Lab. They don't hit anything. I thought they had a Rhino Heart off this, but they just didn't. They're going to go ahead and summon Ducaris to draw 2 instead of special summon, which was a interesting choice. They're going to go ahead and use Keldo, shuffle some stuff back. And that's my opponent's turn. A very interesting turn for Tier Lab. I'm not quite sure why Shiren or Rhino Heart. Like, they hit Rhino Heart off of Shiren. I'm not quite sure why it didn't activate, because I'm pretty sure it, like, foolishes or some nonsense. Anyways, who cares? We go ahead and do all of our Nemleria stuff here, and my opponent is about to very much discover why Nemleria is such a good deck. We're going to go ahead and do all of our nonsense, go ahead and get rid of our cards. Hey, look, Coette's back! And we grabbed a Reviler, because I got a Reviler in hand, so we're going to go ahead and summon the Reviler. Boom shakalaka. Bada boom bam. And then, from that point, my opponent's like, okay, you got me. I'm not quite sure why they instantly gave up. I'm assuming they thought I had Grand Maju, but yeah, the Tier Lab player decided to give up. I'm not quite sure why. I think both decks could have won in the long run, but yeah, let's go ahead and get on to our next game, which our next game is going to thankfully be longer than the other games we've had so far. I know I said we were going to be getting to the next game, but on a whim I decided to look at the Tier Lab deck, and this is a deck. Indeed, they've got a bunch of limited cards, including a 48 card That Grass deck for some reason. I'm not quite sure why they did that, but yeah, that's a thing. They have 3 transaction rollbacks, which is a good card, but they also only have 1 big welcome, and they don't even have the welcome Labyrinth. They've got Trivikarma, they've got Tearlaments Crime, Tearlaments Suliak, a random Fenrir, a random Wraithsoth. So yeah, in hindsight, I don't know what my opponent was cooking. I figured I would showcase this, because I figured somebody would want to see this absolutely wacky deck, including whatever the hell this card is. I didn't even know this was a card until 3 seconds ago. So yeah, you're welcome for this view into whatever I'm looking at. Anyways, back into the action with a bit of a longer game here. I will say before we go any further that this game is going to be getting its own video and a non-commentated replay, because I'm pretty proud of how this game turned out. Anyways, without further ado, let's find out what my opponent's playing. They're going first. They're going to be playing Cards of Consonance, and I can't really do anything in response to that. My opponent is then going to use the White Stone of Legend to grab a Blue Eyes. They are on Blue Eyes. They also have the Melody of Awakening to do more nonsense with their Blue Eyes. They're going to go into Alternative and another Blue Eyes, because why not? My opponent is going to reveal the Blue Eyes to summon Alternative, and then they play Bystrial Baldrake, And this is when my expectations for this game rapidly changed. I thought I was playing another Baby Blue Eyes deck, but no, they've got Bestial, Baldrake, and on top of it, they've also got Branded Fusion. That's right, folks, we're playing a Bestial branded Blue Eyes deck. That is way too many bees. My opponent is going to go ahead and do all of their stupid branded nonsense, and I'm just going to take the moment here to whine and complain about why I don't like branded. This is basically just dragon elemental heroes. You have these big ridiculous fusion monsters, and then you have their big boss fusion monster, this ugly stupid Space Godzilla looking rat. And before we go any further, I just want to say, for all you people who wonder why I call this elemental heroes but dragons, this is literally just a better Absolute Zero, okay? And I played elemental heroes back in 2011 when they were actually kind of relevant, and they had Absolute Zero to make your life a nightmare, and I hated Absolute Zero. And Mirror Jade is just a better Absolute Zero, and that's why I hate Brandon. Anyways, sorry about that rant. I just wanted to get that on video in case I haven't done it. I will make sure I don't do this rant again. My opponent summons a Blue Eyes of Piss Dragon, grabbing Chaos Form and Chaos Max so they can go for game next turn. I am in a bit of a pickle because if I get rid of Mirror Jade, they're gonna get rid of all of my monsters. And also they can just fire off a Banish, but it doesn't matter because I've got a Lightning Storm. Get out of here, you stupid scaly sons of guns. They're gonna go ahead and do their nonsense. I'm gonna go ahead and play Sweet Dreams Nemleria, and my opponent is going to immediately Ultimate Fusion 3 of their Blue Eyes into their big boss monster, Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. You've got to be kidding me. We'll go from one big scary dragon monster to another at the end of the damage step. If this is the only card you control, if this is the only face-up card you control, add this, and this fusion summon card attacked. I'm sorry, let me try that again. At the end of the damage step, if this is the only face-up card you control, and this fusion summoned card attacked, you can send a Blue Eyes Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. It can attack again twice in a row, which is pretty friggin' obnoxious. This basically is just a finisher by itself. You can use this effective Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon up to twice per turn. So it gets, like 7 or 9 attacks, which is a pretty silly number of attacks. And during either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated that targets a Blue Eyes monster you control, you can banish this from the graveyard and negate it, and then destroy that card. So this is a 7 attacking negate from the grave, which is pretty nonsensical, and it's even funnier because I'm about to just kaiju this card. Now, they've got no Blue Eyes for me to target, so they can't do their Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate nonsense. I'm going to go ahead and do all my Nemleria stuff. We get the Sacred Triforce of Nemleria, Revile, O'Reiler, and then my opponent in the middle of my summons is going to summon a Druis Worm, banishing one of their cards. I'm going to go ahead and activate O'Reiler's effect. Just go ahead and thin out my deck a little bit more, and from here I'm going to summon my Grand Maju. Now, Grand Maju normally with this deck can be absolutely massive, especially if you can get rid of all of your extra deck monsters, but I can only get rid of a few here. It's a bit sad, so we have a slightly tiny Grand Maju here. I'm going to go ahead and attack into my Kaiju with my O'Reiler, just to go ahead and walk over it, do a little bit of damage. Attack into the Druis Worm. They're going to go ahead and Druis Worm. Now, I thought if I attacked into Druis Worm with anything other than Grand Maju first, that they just go ahead and get rid of Grand Maju and then I lose a bunch of damage. But with this attack, I'm actually going to pressure my opponent to try to get rid of a different monster with Druis Worm, which is going to go ahead and activate Coet. So I just go, no, you don't get to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and do even more damage. Now, at the end of this turn, all of my monsters are going to die, so this isn't the best play in the world. I'm going to go ahead and use Revile's effect to go ahead and get rid of the O'Reiler to go ahead and grab the Louvre so I can have my non-target Book of Moons. And then when they try to destroy everything with Mirror Jade, I'm going to go ahead and just activate the Dream Tower's secondary effect and go, nah, my Nemleria monsters get to stay. So they're going to go ahead and set their branded banishment, which at this moment in time, I don't really pay attention to. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. They're going to go ahead and banish they're going to banish a White Stone of Legend to grab back their Abyss Dragon, and they're going to Chaos Form the Abyss Dragon into the almighty Blue Eyes Chaos Max, which is a bit of a problem. I'm going to go ahead and activate Louvre to go ahead and just put that nonsense face down. It can't be targeted, but thankfully, when I Louvre into my Cake Monster, it's a non-targeted Book of Moon. My opponent is going to Branded Banishment, and this is when I realize, oh, they're not grabbing a Thespian monster. They're grabbing the Neo Ultimate, which I didn't know they could do with that card, which makes this a little bit of a tricky predicament. I'm like, oh, fun. Go ahead and summon the Cake Monster, and we're just going to go ahead and put Neo Blue Eyes to sleep. They're going to attack for 2,000 because this card is really silly, and then I'm just going to protect it with the Dream Tower because the Dream Tower is incredible. We're going to put the Cake Monster back into our hand. Dreaming Reality is going to bounce the Coet back into our deck. We're going to Book of Moon, the other big scary Blue Eyes monster. We're going to use the Dream Tower's effect to grab Revile and O'Reiler, and I can use all these cards, get rid of all my extra deck monsters, and I have just enough with the second Reviler and the O'Reiler's effect to have just Nemleria left in my extra deck. And from here, she's going to go ahead and do her thing. Bye-bye Brand Diffusion. Bye-bye all scary Blue Eyes monsters. I'm going to go ahead and put a few cards back into my extra deck. And there's literally nothing my opponent can do from here to stop me. But before I can swing for game, they're going to scoop it up and be like, Alright, it's time for our main event. The longest game of the video, and in my opinion, the most interesting. My opponent won the coin flip and made me go first, which kind of sucks. So I'm going to go ahead and use Nemleria, and the first thing they do is Max C, because, you know, that's a really cool card like that. I'm going to go ahead and Dimension Shifter, just because I don't have a reason not to. Basically, this is a catch-all, like, oh, okay, do you have things you want to put into your graveyard? Too bad, they're in the Banish Zone. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Dream Tower's effect to grab the Revile and the O'Reilly's effect. Going to go ahead and Pot of Prosperity, get rid of some more cards from my extra deck. Looking for some action here. And we find a Lightning Storm, but I'm going to go ahead and grab the Kaiju out of the 6 cards that I grabbed in case they have some nonsense, so I can go ahead and get rid of it. On my turn, I'm going to go ahead and summon the Revile, and from here, I'm going to try and activate Revile's effect, being confused why I can't, so I'm going to summon the O'Reiler, thinking there's some, like, bug where I have to have it on the board, and I'm going to discover I just flat out can't activate Revile, and I'm going to be very confused here. But, remember that Dimension Shifter we threw away? Yeah, it's kind of preventing me from using Revile's effect and grabbing the Louvre. So, yeah, I just gave my opponent a second free card for literally no reason. Just because I forget how Dimension Shifter and Revile interact with each other, which is pretty poorly. My opponent is going to show off the fact that they are playing a Red Dragon Archfiend deck, which is not scary at all. My opponent is going to summon a Resonator, then they're going to summon a Wandering King into a Red Rising Dragon. Yeah, this Wandering King Wild Wind here, this very muscular furry man alongside their Resonator. They're going to normal summon the Effect Veiler, which is a tuner, with their big Synchro Red Rising Dragon, and then they're going to play an Ancient Pixie Dragon, and then my opponent plays the most headache-inducing card they could, Kaiser Colosseum. One of my least favorite floodgates. I'm going to go ahead and start trying to get rid of some stuff out of my extra deck just for the setup of when I eventually do get to Nemleria. I'm going to go ahead and do a Kaiju here, thinking I have some nonsense I can do. Get rid of some more cards out of my extra deck. I'm going to go ahead and put the O'Reiler in attack mode. Banish a card from my extra deck to the grave to make a big O'Reiler, and then they're going to Fiendish Golem my card. Target a monster with 2,000 or more attack, banish it until the end phase of the next turn. Then if you activated this card while you control the a Red Dragon Archfiend, or a Synchro monster that mentions that you can set a Fiendish Chain, which is, you know, a very cool effect. So they're going to go ahead and just banish my O'Reiler, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm going to use my other O'Reiler's effect to put the Revile, I should say. I'm going to use the Revile's effect to put the other Revile in grave, so I can go ahead and set a Louvre, just in case I need the non-target Book of Moon. They're going to go ahead and Resonator Call here, and I'm like, oh, great. My opponent added a card to their hand, so I'm going to go ahead and activate Troll and Lockbird. They're going to go ahead and use the Crimson Gaia to add back their card. And then from here, I decide, wait a minute. This is a big Synchro deck. They can't Synchro if their tuner is face down. So I'm going to go ahead and Nemleria Louvre here, summoning the Dreaming Reality, which is going to put their Resonator face down, forcing my opponent to play one face down card and end their turn, thinking they're safe with their Kaiser Coliseum, but that's the fun part about Louvre. Louvre puts the monster back into your hand at the end phase, meaning they have 2 monsters and I have 1. I can summon 1 more monster. We're going to go ahead and summon the Nemleria to banish all of the cards on the board. They're going to go ahead and activate a Fiendish Golem to get rid of my other Revile, which doesn't really do much, but it's fine. Go ahead and banish all these cards right here. Put some cards back into my extra deck. And then from here, it's just a matter of summoning Revile, and then summoning the Dreaming Reality, bouncing back Nemleria, using the Dreaming Reality to put Nemleria back on top of my extra deck so I can do more nonsense with it, summoning all my monsters, and before I can go for game, my opponent reveals Nibiru. Now, this is pretty rough. If they get rid of this token, I'm just dead, because I got nothing going on except my own Nibiru. They're going to Monster Reborn my O'Reiler, and I'm like, alright, here it comes, the nonsense. But then they play a card face down, and Fiendish Golem gives me back my Revile. And just like that, we've got a game on our hands. Now, I can't use my tower to grab more monsters out of my deck, but I'm going to go ahead and attack with the Nibiru token. They're going to try to imperm it, but they forget that the Primal Being doesn't have an effect. The Primal Being can't be impermed, which I think they forgot in the moment. They're like, well, let's see what I draw. Hopefully that's going to be something nice. My opponent is going to reveal Called By. They're going to Called By my other Revile, just out of spite, and then they're going to attack my O'Reiler, but I'm like, no, you don't get to end these games on your term. We're ending them on mine. I'm going to activate Nemleria Louvre, which makes any monster I feel like on my opponent's board lose 100 attack and defense for every single banished card that I've got, making them lose, I think, a grand total of 1,700 attack, which makes them take 7,400 damage for that to be enough for game over. And with that, let's go right into the wrap-up. With those replays concluded, visiting hours in Dreamland have officially concluded, and now Nemleria is going to go take a very well-deserved nap. Again. I had an absolute blast playing this deck again, especially on the ladder. Having success with this deck feels so awesome, and I'm telling you folks, if you want to try Nemleria out yourself, I highly recommend this deck. It does have quite a few URs in the main deck and can be a bit expensive, but the extra deck can be so silly. You can have actual cards you can use, or just a bunch of silly cards like me, which makes the deck even more just ridiculous, especially when you win with this deck. With all that concluded, I have been the Ghost with Knife. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, folks, and I will see you in the next one. Sweet dreams, everybody.